The cold sterility of the lab made her skin prickle, though she was unsure if it was from the temperature or the foreign energy of this place. The walls were blinding white, smooth and seamless, stretching into infinity like the inside of some soulless machine. Overhead, fluorescent lights hummed with a persistent artificial life, their glow reflecting off the reinforced glass that separated her from the creatures that had taken her, humans. They watched her with curiosity, excitement, and fear, some of them in lab coats, their insignias stitched into the fabric, a silver eagle perched atop a shield, others in military uniforms standing stiffly, gripping weapons meant for intimidation rather than immediate use. And then there was the man she had come to recognize as the leader of this operation, Dr. Kenneth Rourke. She had learned their language fast. Absorbing information was second nature to her species, the Zalari, a race far more advanced than the humans, but bound by an unfortunate biological flaw. They could not reproduce easily. Her name, or at least the closest phonetic approximation humans could manage, was Saria. Her kind had traveled the galaxy for millennia, gathering knowledge, understanding civilizations, and ensuring their own survival. But she had been captured, brought here, to this place they called Black Site Omega, where she would become part of an experiment too grotesque to have been imagined even in her species' darkest histories. They wanted to mix her DNA with theirs. "How is the subject responding?" Rourke's voice was clinical, detached. He had the tone of a man discussing the effectiveness of a machine rather than addressing a living being. Dr. Evelyn Carter, one of the lead geneticists, glanced at her tablet. "Stable. No signs of biological rejection from the preliminary cell fusion tests. Her egg cells have successfully bonded with human sperm samples at an unprecedented rate. We're looking at a viable embryo." There was silence, then a murmur. For the first time in human history, a hybrid between their kind and an extraterrestrial was no longer theoretical. It was happening. Saria, bound by a force field rather than shackles, narrowed her crystalline blue eyes. She understood now. She wasn't just a prisoner. She was a vessel, and she needed to escape. Saria closed her eyes, listening beyond the hum of the force field that held her in place. The humans assumed she was passive, compliant. They thought her silence meant submission. Fools. Her kind were not violent by nature, but they were survivors. And survivors adapted. She focused inward, feeling the energy that coursed through her veins, a bioplasmic force unique to her species. The humans hadn't realized it yet, but they had placed her in an environment that, while designed to contain her, also gave her time. Time to learn, to observe, to calculate. "She doesn't seem to be resisting," one of the younger scientists noted, peering at her through the glass. "Her vitals are steady. Neural scans show minimal distress." "That's what worries me," Rourke muttered. "A creature that intelligent doesn't just accept captivity. Something isn't right." He wasn't wrong, but humans had a habit of underestimating things they didn't understand. Days passed, maybe weeks. It was hard to tell in a place without windows, without a sky. The only way Saria marked time was through the routines of her captors. She was subjected to scans, blood extractions, and genetic modifications she barely understood. Modifications meant to make her more compatible with human DNA. The scientists worked in teams, debating theories on cross-species fertilization, mutagenic stability, and embryonic viability. At first the process was purely scientific, then it became political. Saria learned that the project, codenamed Genesis Protocol, wasn't just about creating a hybrid, it was about power. "The potential military applications of an Zalari-human hybrid are limitless," a general had said in one of their meetings. "Enhanced cognition, regenerative capabilities, increased lifespan. Imagine a soldier who can heal from a bullet wound in minutes, who can think faster than an AI. If we succeed, the United States would be light years ahead of any global superpower." A weapon. They didn't want a child. They wanted a super soldier. Saria felt the weight of it pressing against her chest. Her people had long feared human ambition. Their rapid technological advancements, their wars, their hunger for control, and now she was at the center of their next step toward supremacy. But then, something unexpected happened. Dr. Evelyn Carter had always believed in science. She believed in discovery, in pushing boundaries. But she had never signed up for this. She watched Saria from the observation deck, arms crossed over her lab coat. The alien woman sat in her containment chamber, her silver-blue skin faintly luminescent under the harsh lighting. She was beautiful in an otherworldly way, her features delicate yet strong, her gaze filled with a quiet intensity. Evelyn had spent enough time with her to know that Saria was intelligent. Far more intelligent than anyone in this facility seemed to acknowledge, and she was afraid, not of death, but of what came after. Evelyn's hands clenched at her sides. The embryo was developing faster than expected. Too fast. What they were creating wasn't just a genetic anomaly, it was an abomination. She had to make a choice. If she stayed silent, she would be complicit. If she acted, she would be branded a traitor. But deep down, she already knew what she had to do. She had to set Saria free. Evelyn slipped into the restricted lab sector under the guise of conducting routine analysis. Her security clearance got her past the first few doors, but once she reached the main containment wing, things became trickier. Saria sat motionless as Evelyn approached the force field. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then, in a hushed voice, Evelyn said the words Saria had been waiting for. "I'm getting you out of here." Saria's eyes flickered with something unreadable. Then she simply asked, "Why?" Evelyn hesitated. "Because this isn't science anymore. It's wrong." Saria studied her, then nodded once. Evelyn entered the override codes into the console, her hands shaking. The force field flickered, then collapsed with a low hum. And for the first time since her capture, Saria was free. But alarms blared almost instantly. The humans had protocols for this. They would not let her go easily. Within minutes, the facility was in full lockdown. Armed guards swarmed the corridors, barking orders into their radios. "Containment breach in Sector 9. Subject is escaping." Evelyn and Saria moved fast, weaving through the labyrinthine corridors. But it wasn't fast enough. A squad of soldiers blocked their exit, weapons raised. "Stop!" one of them ordered. Saria's body tensed, her instincts screaming at her to fight, but she knew that engaging them would only confirm their fears, that she was a threat. So she did something unexpected. She raised her hands, surrendering. Evelyn's heart pounded. "Saria, no!" But before the soldiers could react, the lights overhead shattered. A pulse of raw energy exploded from Saria's body, sending the guards sprawling. Not enough to kill them, just enough to disable them. Evelyn stared. You could have done that at any time?" Saria turned to her, her expression unreadable. "I needed to know if you would betray me." Evelyn swallowed hard. "And?" A flicker of something almost like a smile crossed Saria's lips. "You didn't." They reached the exit, but the moment they stepped outside, they froze. The sky was wrong. A massive structure loomed above them, blocking the stars. A ship, but not human. Evelyn had never seen anything like it. And then, as if on cue, a deep, resonant hum filled the air. Saria's eyes widened. "They came for me." A sleek, dark craft descended, hovering just feet from them. The air rippled as a portal opened, but before Saria could step forward, a voice rang out behind them. "Stop right there." Rourke. Gun raised, breathing hard. "If you leave, you're declaring war on humanity," he said. Saria held his gaze. "No," she said softly. "I'm giving you a choice." Rourke's jaw clenched. "And what choice is that?" Saria's expression turned solemn. "To evolve, or to be left behind." For a moment, no one moved. Then Evelyn grabbed Saria's hand, pulling her forward. They stepped into the ship, into the unknown. And Earth was never the same again. The moment Saria and Evelyn stepped into the ship, the atmosphere changed. The air was richer, charged with an energy that tingled against Evelyn's skin. The walls of the vessel pulsed with faint luminescence, organic rather than mechanical, shifting as though responding to their presence. Evelyn barely had time to process before the ship moved. Not the sluggish liftoff of human aircraft. This was something else entirely. 1 second, they were above the black site. The next, the Earth was shrinking beneath them, swallowed by the black expanse of space. Evelyn's breath hitched. Oh my God. Saria turned to her, tilting her head slightly. Your deity is not here. Evelyn let out a shaky laugh, more from nerves than amusement. Yeah, no kidding. Saria exhaled slowly. She should have felt relief, but a weight still pressed against her chest. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. And then they arrived. The ship drifted into the orbit of a celestial body, unlike anything Evelyn had ever seen. A massive structure, part space station, part living entity, floated against the backdrop of an iridescent nebula. It pulsed with light, vast and ancient, a testament to the Zalari's mastery over time, space, and biology. As they disembarked, Evelyn felt the air shift again. It was breathable, yet charged with something more, something intelligent. A delegation of Zalari awaited them, tall, elegant figures, clad in shimmering robes that shifted in color like liquid metal. Their eyes, deep pools of luminescent silver, regarded Evelyn with something between curiosity and suspicion. One of them stepped forward, taller than the rest, wiser. Their voice was both audible and felt, resonating in Evelyn's very mind. Saria. She bowed her head slightly. Elder Valthyr. Valthyr's gaze flickered to Evelyn. And the human? Evelyn swallowed hard, feeling impossibly small under their scrutiny. Saria lifted her chin. She is the reason I am here. Valthyr studied Evelyn for a long moment before turning back to Saria. You are aware of what you have done? Saria nodded. I am. Valthyr's expression darkened. Then you understand that the experiment cannot be allowed to continue. Evelyn felt a cold dread settle in her stomach. What does that mean? She asked cautiously. Saria's voice was quiet. They will erase it. Evelyn's pulse quickened. Wait, hold on. Erase it? You mean the hybrid? Valthyr inclined his head. The experiment is a threat, a fusion of incompatible genetic codes, an anomaly that should not exist. Evelyn clenched her fists. But it does exist. And if it's alive, it has a right to— It is not alive, Valthyr interrupted, his tone gentle but firm. Not yet. It is potential, and some potentials must not be realized. Saria's heart ached. She had known this would be their stance. The Zalari were deeply logical, almost to a fault. They feared genetic corruption, instability, the chaos that uncontrolled evolution could bring. But standing beside Evelyn, seeing the fire in her human eyes, Saria questioned everything she had once accepted. What if we're wrong? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. What if this child is the next step, not an abomination? Valthyr's expression remained unreadable. You have spent too long among them. Saria's gaze sharpened. Perhaps not long enough. While the Zalari debated the fate of the experiment, Earth was in turmoil. The disappearance of both Saria and Evelyn had sent shockwaves through military and scientific communities. Black Site Omega had been compromised. The hybrid was now out of their hands. Panic set in. What happens if they use the hybrid against us? A senator demanded in a classified briefing. We can't even confirm its viability, another official countered. General Rourke, however, was silent. His mind was elsewhere. He wasn't thinking about war. He was thinking about what Saria had said before she left. To evolve, or to be left behind. For the first time in his career, he wondered if humanity had spent too much time preparing for war instead of preparing for the future. Back aboard the Zalari station, the council reached a verdict. The experiment must be destroyed. Evelyn felt like the air had been knocked out of her lungs. No, you can't just— The decision is made, Valthyr said simply. Saria turned to Evelyn, her own heart pounding. I'm sorry. But Evelyn wasn't going to accept that. She had fought too hard to get here, and she wasn't about to lose. Evelyn ran. She didn't know where she was going, only that she had to stop them. Saria was right behind her. "Evelyn, wait!" But Evelyn didn't stop. She couldn't. Somewhere in this station, the hybrid was still nothing more than a cluster of cells, a microscopic promise of something greater. But if Evelyn had learned anything in her time as a scientist, it was that every discovery begins with something small, and she wasn't going to let them kill that possibility. She reached the medical wing just as the sterilization sequence initiated. "No," she breathed. Saria caught up to her, grabbing her arm. "It's too late." Evelyn turned to her, desperation in her eyes. "You can stop it." Saria hesitated. "This isn't just about science," Evelyn pleaded. "It's about choice. If we destroy this, we're no better than them." For a long moment, Saria said nothing. Then she stepped forward and rewrote history. In the end, the experiment wasn't destroyed. It was transformed. Saria didn't just save it. She changed it, fusing it with Zalari consciousness, giving it something entirely new. Not just human, not just Zalari. Something more. And when Earth and the Zalari realized what had been created, the galaxy changed forever. For better, or for worse. The chamber pulsed with an eerie glow as the hybrid developed at an accelerated rate. What should have taken months, years even, was happening in days. The Zalari's technology, combined with human resilience, had created something neither species fully understood. Saria and Evelyn stood before the containment pod, watching the embryonic form shift, grow, and evolve. It wasn't just a child. It was something else entirely. Evelyn exhaled. "What happens when it wakes up?" Saria's gaze remained locked on the pod. "We find out what we've created." The world was on edge. The United States government scrambled to recover from the breach at Black Site Omega, and news of extraterrestrial involvement leaked in fragments through classified channels. Publicly, officials denied everything. But behind closed doors, the world's greatest powers were preparing for what came next. China, Russia, the European Union. Even smaller nations knew something was off. The question wasn't if humanity was alone anymore. The question was, what were they willing to do about it? Inside the Zalari station, the pod cracked open with a hiss of steam. Evelyn and Saria tensed. Then, slowly, something stepped out. It was humanoid, but it was not human. Nor was it fully Zalari. Its skin shimmered like liquid metal, shifting between deep blues and silver, as though unable to decide what form to take. Its eyes, larger than a human's but less luminous than a Zalari's, blinked slowly as it adjusted to existence. Evelyn's voice was barely a whisper. "It's beautiful." The hybrid turned its gaze toward them, studying them as much as they studied it. Then it spoke, not with words, with thoughts. "You created me." Saria took a cautious step forward. "We did." The hybrid tilted its head. "Why?" Evelyn swallowed hard. "Because we needed to know if it was possible." The hybrid stared at them. Then, with a chilling calmness, it responded, "It is. Now, what will you do with me?" The Zalari Council was divided. Half believed the hybrid should be destroyed, an anomaly that should never have existed. The other half saw potential, something new, something that could bridge the divide between species. Earth, however, had no such internal debate. They had already decided. They would take it. A fleet of human ships, armed with stolen alien technology from decades of hidden experiments, was already en route to the Zalari station. Their mission was clear: retrieve or terminate the hybrid at all costs. And General Rourke was leading the charge. As the Zalari debated and Earth prepared for war, the hybrid simply watched. It absorbed knowledge at an exponential rate, understanding both its creators and its captors. It learned of war, of history, of destruction. It learned what humanity was capable of, and it made a decision. "I don't want to be a weapon," the hybrid said aloud for the first time. Evelyn's heart clenched. "You're not. You're—" "I am a weapon," it interrupted. "Because that's what they will see me as." Saria frowned. What do you see yourself as? The hybrid was silent for a long moment. Then it simply said, something new. The human fleet arrived within hours. The Zilari, though technologically superior, were hesitant to engage in all-out war. They had the means to wipe the humans from existence, but doing so would go against their very philosophy, and that hesitation gave the humans an advantage. Rourke's voice came through the transmission channels. We know you have the hybrid. Hand it over, and no one gets hurt. Evelyn and Saria stood on the command deck, looking at the approaching fleet. Saria exhaled sharply. They won't stop. Evelyn clenched her fists. Then we have to make them. She turned to the hybrid. Can you stop them? The hybrid tilted its head. Yes, Evelyn hesitated. Without killing them? The hybrid was quiet. Then it stepped forward and reached out, and the human fleet stopped, mid-space. The humans aboard the fleet suddenly felt something. A presence in their minds, not invasive, but aware. It was the hybrid, and it showed them. Not destruction, not fear, but possibility. In a single instant, every human aboard those ships knew what the hybrid was, what it could become. And for the first time in human history, they hesitated. Rourke stood on the bridge of his ship, his hands shaking. He had spent his whole life preparing for war, but now, standing on the precipice of something far greater, he realized how small war truly was. He gave the order, "Stand down." And just like that, the battle ended before it began. The hybrid, now known as Vial, became the first of its kind, but not the last. The Zilari and humans did not become allies overnight, but they didn't become enemies either. Vial became a bridge, a living testament to what could happen when species chose evolution over destruction. And as the stars stretched infinitely before them, humanity faced a future they had never imagined. Not as conquerors, not as the conquered, but as something new. And the universe would never be the same again. The stars stretched endlessly before them, an infinite canvas of possibility. Vial stood at the edge of the Zilari station's grand observation deck, their silver-blue form reflecting the ethereal glow of the surrounding nebula. Below, Earth was but a distant speck, a fragile world teetering between greatness and ruin. They had made their choice. Now, the universe awaited what came next. Humanity did not adapt easily. News of the failed military operation spread across classified channels, then into the public. Leaks, whistleblowers, and underground journalists shattered the carefully constructed lies of the world's governments. The truth was undeniable now. Humans were no longer alone, and they were no longer the dominant force in the galaxy. Riots broke out in cities across the globe. Some feared annihilation, others demanded war. But there were also those who saw beyond the panic, scientists, visionaries, and everyday dreamers who understood what this truly meant. Not the end of humanity, but the beginning of something new. In secret, world leaders gathered, presidents, prime ministers, generals. They debated whether to prepare for peace or for war. General Rourke stood in the heart of it all. Once the man who had led the charge to take Vial, he now found himself at odds with everything he had believed. The Zilari have made their stance clear, he said in a closed meeting with the president. They do not seek conquest. The president frowned. And the hybrid? Rourke hesitated, thinking back to that moment aboard his ship when Vial had touched his mind, when they had shown him a future not of war but of understanding. They're not our enemy, Rourke admitted. The president exhaled. Then what are they? Rourke's jaw tightened. Then, for the first time, he spoke the truth he had been afraid to acknowledge. They're our future. Vial was no longer a prisoner, no longer an experiment. They were something neither Zilari nor human had expected, and they had a choice. The Zilari offered sanctuary, a place to learn, to explore their potential among the stars, away from human conflict. Evelyn, however, stood before them with an offer just as bold. "Come back with me," she said, "to Earth." Saria, standing beside Vial, looked uncertain. That may not be safe. Evelyn nodded. It's dangerous, yes, but it's where you came from, Vile. It's where the next step has to begin. Vile studied them both. They understood the risk. Humans had proven themselves capable of destruction, but they had also shown something else. The capacity to change. Vile turned their gaze back to the void of space. The stars whispered endless possibilities. But for all its chaos, all its uncertainty, there was something about Earth that called to them. And so, they made their decision. The Zalari ship descended into Earth's orbit under a carefully arranged ceasefire. No missiles were fired. No jets scrambled. The world watched. And then, for the first time, an extraterrestrial being, born of both human and alien DNA, stepped onto Earth's soil. Viel did not come as a conqueror, nor as a savior, but as a symbol of what could be. Evelyn and Saria stood at their side as they addressed the world. I am not your enemy. Viel's voice echoed across every broadcast channel, transmitted in every language. I am not your weapon. I am change. They raised their hand, not in defiance, not in surrender, but in unity. We are at the edge of something greater than war, greater than fear. This is our moment to evolve. The world listened. Some would resist, but others would rise to meet the future. And so the story of humanity did not end with war. It did not end with conquest. It did not end at all. It began anew. Years passed. Vial became more than just a hybrid. They became a bridge. For the first time in history, humans and Zalari worked together. Not in secret, not in fear, but in open collaboration. Technology advanced in ways once thought impossible. Diseases that had plagued humanity for centuries were eradicated. Energy crises faded as new sources of power were discovered. Space was no longer a distant dream, but an open frontier. And Viel, they were not alone anymore. The first hybrid was never meant to be the last. New generations followed, each more advanced, more capable of shaping the path forward. Not just for humans, not just for Zalari, but for something greater than both. The universe had changed forever, and the stars were only the beginning.